Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for watching yet another great interview for our Virtual Business Connection Summit. And today we're talking to Ed Montgomery, and he is from Dispatch. He has been doing sales for a really, really long time. And what we're going to be talking about today is how to create that consistency, that normalcy, how to make sales an actual career, not something where you're just like good moment, good moment, bad moment. So without further ado, Ed, please tell us who you are, what you do, and a brief little intro into the kind of things we're going to talk about.
Sure. Thanks very much, Bill. Again, my name's Ed Montgomery. I'm currently an enterprise sales manager for Dispatch. We are sort of like the Uber of delivery services. And I work, my role is to serve the larger customers that we have around the country in a specific vertical market. And, we have a lot of different verticals that are good natural fits for what we do. And so my role is to serve those folks and help them and keep those relationships strong and business coming in the door. As you said, I've been selling for a very long time. I actually graduated from college back in 1985, and was going to be a teacher, but then fell into sales sort of accidentally and never stopped. So it's been a 35-ish plus year career so far. Primarily, a lot of it's been in management. I'd sell for a while, but then I would move up and be a team leader of some sort or another. So I've spent a lot of time teaching and training salespeople and managing business from that particular level. Um, and how we got there and how I've done this and been successful this length of time is that I tend to treat sales in my job like a marathon, not a sprint. And I do use a running metaphor because I am a runner and it helps, but it is a good visual way, even if you're not a runner, people kind of get the difference between a sprint and a marathon and how they're approached differently, despite the current speeds of top tier marathoners. They are
Yeah.
unbelievably fast.
Yeah. I actually saw some recent articles about that, and I was just like, the times that they were saying, I'm like, this doesn't make sense because it's like 36 miles or something like that.
Well, 29, yeah,
There you go.
26.2 miles, and they're running 435s, 435 miles back to back.
Okay. That's
It's
it's fast.
amazing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amazing stuff.
So, getting into the start of this, so when someone's getting into sales, I think that the first thing they need to do is have the right mindset when getting in, right expectations. So I kind of want to start with that. What is give us a picture of that, I think would be the best way to word that.
Well, I mean, starting off, it's getting into the right mindset, and I always start off with talking about say the first rule in sales. The number one rule in sales is to care about the people you're selling to. And that is more a mindset. That is getting your mind in the right place of that you are here to, you want good things for these people that you're dealing with, because you are dealing with people, human beings, and they have lives just like you do, and they have pressures and things that are going on outside this job. And so what you want to do when you care for somebody, immediately you're going to listen to them. You are going to want what's best for them. You are going to work hard for them. And that being the case, when you start with that as your mindset, regardless of what you're selling, that is going to come across, and people are going to sense that and get it. Especially as when you really do care for somebody, you're not going to try to slide something by. You're not going to hide things. You're going to be really open and honest, and like I said, you're going to work hard, for them, especially when you think you do have something that's good for them. So that's kind of the beginning of that mindset. That the second part of this that I like to push is that this is something that's going to go on for a long, long time, and you kind of have to embrace the mundane that is going to be repeated again and again and again. Because when people, you hear sales is a numbers game, you're going to hear that, and it really is. But so is most anything in life. It's a numbers thing. Um, so you have to have to get a certain number of sales, you have to have a certain number of meetings. To have a certain number of meetings, you got to have a few more phone conversations prior to those meetings, and before that, you got to reach out to so many more people because not everybody replies, and it just, that's the whole funnel concept. It starts out big, it gets small. Um, you know, so you got to get used to the fact that you're going to be doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So it's not something you want to try to do to the point of exhaustion in day one, or day 10 or day 100. That's not the idea, because you won't be able to do it for years and years and years. And it's those salespeople that can do that for years and years and years that become the ones who are long-term most successful. So it's those two things, I think, that are really critical to get in your mind. That you care about the folks that you're there with, and you don't mind doing the same thing again and again and again.
Absolutely. And that kind of tails in nicely into my next question, which is, now that we know it's going to be something consistent, you were talking about the fact that you don't want to exert yourself too much in the first day. So, what does that look like? How do we create this into a schedule, develop that pipeline, and really start doing those first couple things, which is, building our presence?
Right. Well, how that starts is, you're going to work with your manager. Wherever you're working, more than likely you've got someone else working with you, who has done it before. And so, hey, my wife just stepped in. So someone has been done it before. So you want to, you're going to work with those folks. But the idea is, you want to find out what is good activity. What is activity that makes sense, that is effective, and then you are going to get out of that activity. You can develop KPIs, or they've already been developed for you, and that, key performance indicators, things that measure certain steps, so that you know that your volume is enough. It's not talking about quality, but the volume is enough to be successful in your role. Um, then so in defining those activities, then once you know what they are and you know what the good volumes are, then the idea is just to get to those volumes, so that you can be consistent. It's not to blow past those volumes. I mean, you can, and there will be moments where you do that sort of thing. But again, that's the part where you turn it into a sprint, and it gets exhausting, and it just beats you up. And the other piece of this, absolutely, I forgot one thing that's important to appreciate and understand when you get going. Know that you're going to be bad at it in the beginning. It's okay to suck at it in the beginning. It is. Everybody does. And but that's why huge volume in the beginning is not even the best thing, because you're not going to be that good at it. So
Mm,
you want to do little steps and get yourself used to certain pieces of it, and get yourself better at certain pieces of it. So as the volume increases, so does your skill level. You get better at it.
mm.
But you've got to have that consistency right out of the gate, to just doing reps. It's any exercise. Just get those reps in and get them done, and then you'll get better and better and better. And then, again, work with the others around you who've done this before in the beginning. So when you get off the ground, you're constantly asking. You're recording conversations. You're doing mock meetings or whatever, mock pitches with each other, so that you can learn it and get comfortable and get better and better at it as you go.
Absolutely. And I think you touched on something really good that's been, shown over the last couple of interviews that we've done, which is education and constant practice, which as business owners we should always be doing. And I like how you said that you're going to be building into the market, if you will. Like, you're going to be building into understanding what you're selling. And, if you're on a team, you have those people you can rely on who have done it before. And if you're starting the business yourself, I feel like that's also great advice, because a lot of people are like, I'm going to blow right into it. I'm just going to do this, and this is going to be amazing. But if you go out there and you don't really know what you're selling or how to sell it, now you're spreading the word that you don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah. So
Exactly. And you
doing
want
the
to assume that you don't. Even if you do and you've got a good confidence level, assume that you don't in the beginning. Because no matter what it is, or how many times, like I've done it, something like that, the first few pitches out there, I know I'm going to be better at it a week from now, a month
yeah,
from now. So I don't want to just go out and throw everything I got in those first couple of days, because I'm going to be better at it later. I need to practice on real people, but practice.
exactly. And I think that leads into one of the things I want to talk about. We might come back to something if I have another question, but I know that
Mhm.
the so the expectation of turnover, and I think that's really a big thing with sales, where you know that's why people get hung up on those first person to make $100 get a pizza or something, like get hung up on those competitions. But we're talking about creating a career out of this, whether it's a job
Right.
or a business. So how do we get past that hurdle? What is realistic for that time frame, in your experience? And what do we need to do to get comfortable with that?
Well, I mean, I imagine different verticals, different industries, different jobs have very different ramp times and different
Mhm.
approaches to things.
Of course.
Um, I've been in a few things where it's pretty quick. You can do it pretty easily because it's a very simple approach and pretty simple thing to do. Um, but what I like to do is whatever it is whatever the job is, you want to go back to the beginning of those KPIs, those good activities, and you start with the earliest one, the very top of the funnel type thing, and you practice those first. Even though I think my very first sales job, the training was incredible, very formalized, and it was methodical how they did it. In fact, they were nicknamed, they were known as the Marine Corps of Sales back then because it was work. Uh, Um, Even though you didn't talk to customers, I mean, it was work for about a month. But getting into that is that you had these pieces of activity and you say, okay, yes, you are going to have a face-to-face presentation where you're demonstrating this piece of equipment, but you are not going to get that today.
Mhm.
So even though we had to learn the equipment, answer questions, get all these tests, get all this knowledge and everything else, the first things we practiced were, how do you find that person to have that meeting with? Where do you
Mhm.
look? How do you sift through big crowds of people and names when you're just looking at stuff? And of course, we have the web and LinkedIn and a lot of things now that help quite a bit with this. But because it helps it so well, there's all sorts of defense mechanisms out there that people have and software has to prevent salespeople from finding you and being reaching out and everything else.
Mhm.
So learn that first step and get good at it. To get an introduction, just introduce yourself. One of the things we all have acronyms. When I say we, sales programs all have acronyms that we've grown up and used and learned. Um, but one of the first ones I learned was AIDA, AIDA,
Mhm.
attention, interest, desire, action. Um, but it was that attention, that acronym's kind of stuck with me just because that first step, attention. The very first thing you got to do is get someone's attention. So if that's the first step to getting that action piece later on, you start by working on attention, getting attention. And so you learn those the activities that are built within that activity and how to do things. You get into those tactical pieces and those things you practice. Phone scripts, how to call someone, how to talk to them, how to write an email, those sorts of things. And then practice doing it a few times so that people see it and see, oh, let's see what you did. Here's one I wrote real quick, to get an introduction. And send it to a friend, and then they can look at it, or someone else in the office, and they can look at it and evaluate those things. But starting that out of the gate thing is to begin the process of that learning, and developing those skills are going to make you really good. And you do it in little bits, and just understand that there's a lot to it, and it's not going to happen in a day, you know, in a week, and it's okay. So there are times, like I remember the first few phone calls I made to actually cold call somebody, get an appointment. I got appointments. And I was like, okay, I knew to write down the date and the time, but then I had no clue what to do for the next step. And now I had a deadline that I was going to be face to face with somebody. We got to work on this next piece, and that's okay, because again, you accept the fact that that first meeting is probably not going to go all that great, and you never know, but the idea is now you prepare for that, and then understand that yes, it's a real meeting. Yes, you're really doing this, but it's not your only one. It's not your last one.
Mhm.
you know, and I always feel like there's never a last one. There's always one where I can look back, getting in the car or hanging up on, the computer and going, all right, now what would I have done differently on that one? What could I have said differently, or what did I do? What did I mess up? That's usually the way I
Exactly.
approach it.
Yeah, it's all learning
And
experience.
I want to say that too, because my wife picks on me and says, you're so you're always picking on yourself. It's like, yeah, it's very important to be self-critical, but not self-defeating.
Mhm.
You're not beating yourself up saying you're a failure, but you are saying this was not done well. You got to be honest about it and
Yeah.
say, so I can do it better. So you want to be a really good cheerleader for yourself, but you also want to lie. and tell yourself, oh, this went great. Well, no, it may not have, and if it went
Exactly.
really badly, it went badly, but understand why. Just go, okay, something there didn't go right. What could I do differently? And then you can fix it.
Absolutely. And I think those are all great points, which really start help creating that timeline. And I think that when you do that assessment and figure out the answers to all these questions you just asked and all these things you just posed, you can start seeing a rough timeline,
Hmm.
and it can help you when you're creating a business plan and how much money you might need for a loan if in the beginning or any of that kind of stuff. Or if
Yep.
you're in a career, and you're going into it and the lead salesperson's hiring you, saying like, how long do you think it'll take you to get up and running? If you have you'll be able to give an honest opinion if you're doing
Right.
these assessments
Right.
of yourself, like you're saying. So, all right, I think that the next thing I want to kind of talk about is um, some of the ways that we make sales. I mean, because everyone knows about cold calling, everyone knows about emailing, or like,
Hmm. Hmm.
networking maybe, but like there's hundreds of ways to make sales. And I think that what I want to do is just kind of more of talk about as many as we can. Not really pertaining to any industry so much because I feel like people are going to get a lot out of it if they hear and be like, oh yeah, that might actually work for me. So
Right.
I think I want to just kind of go through like what are ways you've lead gen, how did it go, and kind of just break them down a little bit that way, and just go through as many as we can.
Well, I think a key thing to understand, especially when you're talking about different businesses and people starting up businesses, um, first thing is to really understand how your product or service is going to get sold or bought by people, right? More bought by people. Um, is this a transactional sale? Because let me back up one step. The first thing I feel like people really need to determine is this business? Do I need business development or do I need sales?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's two different disciplines, two different ways of approaching it. Both good, both effective, but it's very, very different in how things go. And I love using an example. Me and my wife, we're in two different industries. We do two different things. I'm much more a transactional type salesperson for the most part. And when I say that, I mean, I look for suspects. I meet them and talk to them and develop prospects. And then in those prospects, I find customers and I get them to write a check and buy. So that to me that's like sales. Business development is a longer term thing. It's more relational. It is more where someone is where their customers are on a daily basis, and they're
Mm-hmm.
interacting with their future customers on a daily basis in a variety of different ways. Sometimes it's directly related to that business, what they're doing, how they're doing it. Sometimes it's not, but it's how that is going to come about. And so to give examples of industry so people have this picture, you I'm with Dispatch. We My goal is to get people to sign up with us and then use us as their on-demand delivery service. And they need something run from A to B. They call us if they don't have their own vehicles. They can use us real quick. And there's a cool little app. So that's fairly transactional. They're making a decision when they need it and get it done and do it. So it's just getting them to have that with us. Yes, there's relationship in there, but it's more about getting them to use us like that. Um, my wife is in construction services. She works for a construction company. So she is getting people to hire them to renovate and remodel really big buildings. Um, that doesn't happen when you call someone up, email them, get their attention, you talk to them real quick about what you do, and you hit them with your stuff, and then all of a sudden they go, "Yep, let me write you a check. I'll buy that." It
Yeah.
doesn't happen that way. So it's a different thing. So depending on the business that someone is starting, defining that. How is this really going to work? And then one of the things you said in there just reminded me of something that a business consultant told me like 10 years ago. It was kind of funny. He said that once you've identified in a very conservative way, in a very thought through and fact based business plan, now you know what your time frame is for ramping up, how much money you're going to use to do it. What you want to do is double that timeline in length and double the amount of money you need.
Mm-hmm.
because it's not going to go the way you think. Something is going to prevent it, and it's not a smooth like line. Anytime you see those business plans where it goes, oh, it does this, no, probably not, because even if it does that in the beginning, a competitor is going to show up, and then you're going to do this, and then there's always something. But starting with that, I think, is the key, and then that way the right approach and the right people to get as salespeople, and the right training you're going to have, and the right activities they're going to do to create that pipeline and eventually create customers for the business. But that's going to give you your timelines too, because business development takes longer out of the gate typically than sales does. Sales, you got to get used to what you're doing and how you're doing it. But it can happen pretty quickly, again, depending on what it is you're selling. If you're selling, say, windows, residential windows, in construction, you're selling in people's homes, they're going in there, they're having those meetings. That's something where you're going to learn about your product, the good, bad, and indifference about your product. You're going to know your pricing schedules, and you're going to know somewhat about timing and installations and things like that in industry. But predominantly, you're going to know the spec things. And then it's just going to be, how good are you at sitting down, gathering information, putting together facts, letting the emotion build, and getting that person during that meeting to feel better and better and more trusting about you, so that in about an hour, 2 hour time period, they're ready to go, yep, I'm buying my windows from you. I mean, that can happen quickly. You're going to build someone a house, it's not going to be like that. It's going to take longer. They're going to be looking at a lot of different things. You're going to have to go through all sorts of different steps, but you're going to have to see things like, especially if it's a developer who builds lots and lots of properties, I'm going to approach that very, very differently. So.
Absolutely. All right, cool. And that really paints a picture of the way that you would apply the different ways that you lead gen. Excuse me. So, so I think that paints a good picture on how to use these different lead gen methods, and that is really cool, between the difference between sales and business development, because that definitely wasn't something that I had thought about, but it makes perfect sense. That you're developing the relationship, or you're just making a sale straight out. So before we go on to the next thing, I do want to kind of go through a couple different ways that people have go through sales. And then I kind of classify social media and like marketing more of like an ongoing difference. So I mean more of like kind of more direct kind of sales stuff. So what are some methods that you've seen or used that like cold calling or emailing? Like, what are ways that you've seen and gathered like those leads from the world, I guess?
Well, it's just like that starts out with knowing who your best customers are. When you get a profile, you develop a profile, or you have one the company has. Here's the people who use us the most, because it's this really strong use case and everything else. Then the goal is, you just got to find those people. So you start with having that sort of profile, and like so many other things in life, begin with the end in mind. Don't just go rushing off and start throwing, grabbing stuff. Begin with your end in mind. So once you've got that defined, and you say, okay, these people are really good for our business. They buy from us, they love us, and we do good for them. So that's like that win-win thing you want to get. So now I go out and find those people. And that can be done a lot of different ways. And I do use LinkedIn quite a bit, obviously the web. We've got this a way of just using Google Maps, to find people. It's kind of neat. That's a search tool. We called it geo-prospecting, is what we kind of nicknamed it. And basically, you pick an area, you got a market, like where I live near Baltimore, DC, and you zoom out, and you zoom in on a particular area of the market, and go, okay, I'm going to have a meeting with this type of customer tomorrow, or day after, or a week from now, whatever. But I've got a meeting with this customer. Who else looks like them in that area? And so you can kind of just search that area by that name, by those keywords, and it'll show you everybody that looks like it. Now I've got a list of people to call on, and call up and say, hey, I'm going to be in your, I do this, I'm going to be in your area. Can we get together? And then you get into that repetitive pattern of those cold calling type things, where you've got a way of saying something quickly and smoothly, and you've got a reason for them to, to give you a few minutes.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a real big meeting, it's a way to be face to face. So using that as a tool, using LinkedIn, using the web. And again, it depends on your industry and what you're selling to the degree that you need to know
Hmm.
certain things and how much you can know before talking to folks. I've seen so many different, um, diametrically opposed things. But cold calling is the only way to go, and then another one is cold calling is dead. Never ever cold call someone again.
Hmm.
And they're both being taught right now. But what's interesting is the one where cold calling is dead. Never ever cold call. You're supposed to know everything about them ahead of time. Assumes you can find out everything about them without actually talking to them.
Hmm.
Because if you're not talking to them, to me, it's like, how do you know if you haven't spoken to that person, if you don't have some sort of interaction going? So there's
Yeah.
still got to be that beginning of a conversation someplace out there.
Hmm.
And so to me, cold calling is effective, even if it's cold emails. Email is not, obviously not nearly as effective as a voice. Being face to face is the best.
Hmm.
Because if you can be face to face, it's tough for somebody to ignore you, hang up, or walk away. They people don't do
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
sometimes. But and it's having those little tactics that you use that help people give you a little bit to let a conversation begin. Because in the beginning, going back to that first step, attention. I've got
Hmm.
to get their attention. Or I can't do anything if I don't have their attention. And so a lot of people think, oh, I'm going to send out 1,000 emails. Well, okay, that means 150-ish, 180 will open it. Um, Out of that 180, 15 will read it,
Hmm.
actually read the email. And then a few of those will reply back. Meanwhile, all those others, they either still don't know you exist, or you've given them a negative impression. They don't want to know you exist.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's a little bit difficult to go that route, just because, there's ways it can create sheer numbers. And so that's why people do it. It's cheap, extremely inexpensive, and you can get a lot of people to call you back. You email 10,000 people. Now I've got close to 500 that I can talk to. That's a lot of people.
Hmm.
The question is, how effective is it really, in the long term? And again, it gets into pace.
Yeah.
You know,
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, that really starts putting things into perspective, and I appreciate the numbers and helping people really grasp the way that sales becomes a consistency for people. And then obviously whether it's a career or whether it's a business, this is sales is the beginning of everything. If you don't make a sale, then nothing in the
right.
company can be funded. So um before we kind of get into some actionable steps of people kind of doing this, is there anything else that you think we need to cover as far as topic or when it comes to sales?
Well, I think a couple of things, and it's you know just what I like in interviewing and talking to folks, and when I'm getting somebody who's brand new, I want people to, when you're doing that, part of the mindset is like, understand you're going to be bad at this in the beginning. It's okay, you know. eh, But there's some certain things where people should be aware going in, especially if you've never done sales before. Um, it's a tough job. A lot of people who are not in sales, if you're in a company and you're looking at the salespeople, and they're always out doing fun things and dinners and golf and it's schmoozing and they just get paid big money. For us, the the reality is that salespeople know that if we don't do our job, the other people in this company don't get paychecks, and there is pressure there to perform. The other piece is that what you do is public knowledge. How well you do at something, everyone knows. There's a list. Usually, a lot of these places, have a big old whiteboard with something with names on it, and it's shown all the time. And at the end of every quarter, there's a meeting. Say, hey, here's our top 3 sales reps, and that's great. Those 3 people are up there. If your name's not on it, how do you react to that? You know,
Mhm.
is it depressing? Is it hard? A lot of people, I want to hear from people when you say that and they go, oh, I want my name on that board. Okay, good. There you go. That's the response. you know it's a competition. It's competitive. It's okay not to succeed and be the top every time, but you want to be good. Everything in life is about want to. It really is. So if you don't want it, it's not going to happen. But I've seen introverts extremely successful in sales as well as extroverts. Lots of different varieties of personalities. But the key thing they all share, they're not afraid to have people know how well they do, how
Mhm.
good they are at their job. They're not afraid of pressure and resistance. They will take that, and they'll do well with it because it is that type of job. It's
Mhm.
that's an important thing. I think that a lot of people, they may not look at it. I used to make it really simple, and it may be this simple that if you don't have a little competitive nature to you, you don't want to be in sales. It's just not. It's not the place.
Mhm.
Um, but it's, how do people define and understand that phrase competitive nature? So it's, because I've seen people who are not like sports people great at sales.
Yeah.
It's not that, but it is the type of thing where if someone were to push you a little bit on your chest, push you back a little bit, how you react to that. It's not about fighting, but it's not about running away. It's
Mhm.
like, I'm going to go through this, whatever it is, but I want something, and I have to go through this resistance,
Mhm.
to get to it. So,
Yeah, that's a really good point. Um, and I think that, like you said, it all starts with those pieces. So with that in mind, what are some actionable steps that someone getting into sales or building their sales pipeline for them as a business, like what are some first things for them to do so they can start applying the things we talked about?
right. Well, define the end. What's the end result? What's the end goal you want? What's the result you want? So it's like, we're talking more about business owners, and that's, people who are running a business or starting it. They've got to know what is the optimum outcome I want, and then what is going to be the thing that makes the most profit, makes the most sense, as far as a good win. Once you get that defined, then you can come backwards a little bit and start saying, okay, how do we get to those things? Because understanding that may begin the thing is like, if you're a business owner, how to develop a pay plan for salespeople. Again, that competitive nature, the fact that salespeople, you want them incentivized to do, not just get customers, but to get good customers that are profitable. And
Hmm.
so you incentivize salespeople to do that. And that's one of those things where I'm a big advocate of, you know, probably the best thing to do is kind of pick a percentage. Cost of sales is going to be this percentage of business, and pay it forever and ever. Amen. So you might have some salesperson making a whole truckload of money. Great. That means they're developing a whole truckload of profitable business for you. So it's
Hmm.
not a negative thing. Um, but you don't want to underpay. You don't want to overpay. I mean, you got to invest, to get some things. But it's figure out your end, and then you can kind of come backwards to start setting up what's got to go forward. On the sales side of life, same thing. End result is get a contract. Okay, what goes into that moment of when someone writes a check and says, "I'm yours. I'm buying your service. I'm buying your product." You've got that moment. How does that moment happen? What leads to it? And then start going backwards through those steps. And that's where you're going to find those good KPIs, those good activities. And as you define them, then you got to quantify it each step of the way. So you can say, okay, well, I want one sale a week. How many meetings do I have to have a sale? You can start with assumption, but most places they have a little history already. They kind of understand it. Oh, well, it takes 4 meetings to get one sale. Okay, now we know a ratio. So we got 4 meetings, one sale. So if we want one sale a week, you better be having 4 meetings every week because you're not going to get that one sale. Now, what's it take to get a meeting? 25 phone calls. Okay, 25 phone calls, 4 meetings, one sale. You're going backwards. You get those things. I love. She's going out to do business development right now on a golf course. Salespeople have it so easy. Yeah, there you go. So now I don't know if I put that in the interview or not, but it can. Um,
Of course.
yeah, but anyway, so you're going backwards, you're developing those steps, those KPIs, and those activities. And now the thing to do is to be able to say, okay, once you've got those and you kind of know those ratios, now what makes for a good meeting? How can I get 2 sales out of every 4 meetings? How do I make that more sales? So then you start getting into the quality of these things. And quality is not just about the salesperson. It's
Hmm.
going to be a lot of it's going to be about the customer across the desk. How good are they? How good a match is this? How good a fit is this going into it? So that gets back into those 25 phone calls and the conversations you're having. How well are you qualifying these situations to make sure you're going to set up for success? I'm a big person to say, play to your strengths. Whatever they are, play to your strengths. So you got to know what they are, but don't go put yourself in a position where it's like, I'm really bad in these moments. Don't put yourself in those moments. You can avoid it.
Yeah.
It's like if you are a little bit introvert, don't get yourself set up to speak in front of crowds. It's not a good thing. It's not comfortable. You're probably not good at it, and that's okay. Go find ways to sell to people on the edges of the conference. Where you're good. Face to face, one on one. So that's play to your strengths. And then once you get all these activities and you know what they are and you've got a couple of quantities and those things, now it's a question of practicing them and determining what is that ongoing success that is optimal. What's going to be the best that at a pace I can keep up and can repeat and can go on ad infinitum. It's forever and ever. And that's where you get into that marathon, not a sprint. You don't just blow out the gates and go into this. You start out, and then now the salesperson is going to start out the biggest part of the funnel and work their way, practice, getting more, doing it, and it's naturally going to create other steps. You make enough phone calls, somebody's going to go, yeah, sure, come on in. It's going to happen. And then you go through and you get those practices, all the way down to where you're having those meetings, and you just keep doing that and doing that and doing that. And in the beginning, it might be 50 phone calls leads to one meeting, not 25. It's okay. You'll get better. Keep working at it. Find out why you're not getting the numbers you should get. It could be who you're calling. It could be what you're saying when you call. It just depends. So working in those steps. But the goal really is to find those things that you can do each and every day and repeat it again and again and again and again. And I know when you and I first met, we were talking, one of the things I said was that for me, even though I've done this for a long time and I've been very successful in life, and at least for me, I feel very comfortable in everything. I'm not a good contest person. I was kind of in the beginning, but probably for the last 20, 30 years, 20 some years, I guess, I'm not. Somebody will have a contest, and like you said, first $100 sold gets pizza or whatever. I remember this one place I worked. It was whoever made the first, whoever got to 2 sales first in this day, because they could happen pretty quickly, got a free weekend in Bermuda. And it was, all expenses paid, airfare thing, free weekend, 2 sales, you go to Bermuda. Man, everybody was scrambling, running all over themselves. And I just went back to my desk and said, well, I'm going to do what I do every day. And I knew that I pretty much averaged 1 sale a day already. So maybe I'll get lucky and get a second one in, but I'm just going to do what I do every day because I'm at the top of the sales board. I really don't care. If I want to go to Bermuda, I can go. It's not that big a deal. So, but I knew that if I just do what I'm doing, somebody might beat me that day and get the cool prize or whatever for that day. But at the end of the month, no, my name's at the top. End of the quarter, my name's top. End of the year, my name's at the top. And it's because I just, I approach it that way.
Absolutely. And it brings that consistency. So,
yep.
Really cool. Thank you so much for your time, Ed. I really appreciate it. I think everyone's going to get a lot out of it, out of everything we talked about. So thank you everybody for joining us. And we will see you all at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time at the networking event tonight.